For 6.5 years, the world believed the grieving husband's act. The trembling voice on television, the perfectly timed tears, and the heartfelt plea, "Please, just come home." Reporters comforted him, neighbors prayed for him, but they didn't know that every time he walked down the stairs in his own home, his shoes tapped on the concrete, concealing a horrifying secret. His missing wife had never really left. She was right there, beneath his feet. Every desperate plea he uttered was spoken while standing on her very own grave. If you want to know the terrifying truth behind these tears, hit the like button and subscribe, because Tina Satchwell's story needs to be heard, and the lessons from it will leave you thinking. Tina Satchwell, born Tina Dingen on November 30, 1972, in Fermoy, County Cork, Ireland, was a petite woman, standing about 5'4" tall, with shoulder-length blonde hair and captivating blue eyes. People remembered her for the Tweety bird tattoo on her chest and her signature belly button ring. Friends described Tina as bright, bubbly, and beautiful, with a natural warmth that drew people in. However, her early life was not simple. She was raised by her grandmother, believing she was her mother, until the truth was revealed when she looked for her birth certificate. Though hurt, Tina deeply loved the woman who had given her everything. Tina's greatest passion was fashion. She had a keen eye for clothes and jewelry. The upper floor of her house was packed with racks holding hundreds of outfits, many with the tags still on. She had a habit of buying them, wearing them, and then selling them at flea markets, where she found joy in socializing. She never stepped out without looking her best, even coordinating outfits for her chihuahua, Ruby. Her pets, 2 dogs, Ruby and Heidi, and a parrot named Valentine, were the children she never had. She loved animals profoundly. Despite her vivacious exterior, those closest to her knew Tina was actually quite shy and introverted. She met Richard Satchwell in England in March 1989 when she was just 17 and he was 22. From their very first meeting, Richard declared he would marry her. He called her his trophy wife. They married on Tina's 20th birthday, but the marriage came at a steep price. Richard's family, who held anti-Irish sentiments, made him choose. He chose Tina, cutting off contact with his own mother. Not a single member of his family attended their wedding. On the surface, it might have seemed like a grand romantic gesture. In reality, it was the first sign of the isolation that would define their relationship. Richard, a truck driver, was said to be obsessed with Tina. He worshipped her, was infatuated with her, and saw her as perfect. He proudly told people that he bathed her 7 nights a week, dried her off, applied baby oil, and tended to her toenails. But this devotion concealed something darker. Tina's half-sister, Lorraine Howard, would later testify that Richard was obsessive, possessive, controlling, and weird. He criticized every friend Tina had until her social circle shrank to nothing. He needed to know where she was at all times. Tina once confided in Lorraine that she felt trapped, that she could never leave because he would hunt her to the ends of the earth. Their world gradually became just the two of them, exactly how Richard wanted it. In 2016, the couple moved to a house at 3 Groton Street in Youghal, a coastal town. This move isolated Tina even further from her family and her familiar community. In Youghal, few people knew her. Neighbors rarely saw her out without Richard by her side. On Sunday, March 19, 2017, Tina and Richard went to a flea market together. Tina seemed to be in high spirits. She bought a black coat, a dress, and expensive perfume. It was the last time anyone outside her household saw or spoke to her. 4 days later, on Friday, March 24th, Richard Satchwell drove to the police station in Fermoy, 27 miles from their home, bypassing the local station in Youghal, to report that his wife had left home 4 days earlier. He explained that he had waited because he thought Tina needed time to get her head straight, and assumed she had gone to stay with her family. According to Richard's story, on the morning of Monday 20, he made Tina breakfast. She then asked him to drive to an Aldi supermarket in Dungarvan, 18 miles away, to buy fish and parrot food. He said he left around 10 a.m. and returned around noon, only to find Tina gone. Richard claimed she had taken 2 large suitcases and €26,000 in cash that had been stored in a box in the attic. He said she had been deeply distressed and acting erratically since her brother's death in 2012. When he learned that Tina's family hadn't seen her either, Richard feigned concern but insisted she had left voluntarily. Initially, police treated it as a standard case of a person leaving home, not an official missing person investigation. Things only kicked into gear nearly 2 months later, on May 11, 2017, when Richard formally filed a missing person report and provided a photo of Tina to the media. But Tina's family didn't buy Richard's story. They knew Tina would never leave without her 2 beloved dogs, nor would she ever abandon her brand-new, cherished fashion items, which were later found still hanging in the living room. The story of the €26,000 in cash was also highly suspicious, as the couple lived on social welfare and their bank account was regularly overdrawn. The disappearance of Tina Satchwell didn't just leave a void, it raised countless disturbing questions. Why would a woman who loved life, who was so attached to her family and pets, suddenly vanish without a trace? Richard Satchwell didn't just report his wife missing and quietly wait. On the contrary, he launched an extraordinary multi-year media campaign. Between June 2017 and March 2018, he gave at least 14 recorded interviews, appearing on Ireland's biggest TV channels, radio shows, and newspapers. He became a familiar face, the heartbroken husband searching for his beloved wife. His most memorable appearance was on July 25, 2017, on RTE's Crime Call. With tears in his eyes, Richard looked directly into the camera and said, "Tina, come home. No one's mad at you. My arms are open for you. The pets are missing you. I can't go on not knowing what's happened." To the audience, it was the desperate plea of a deeply loving husband. He repeatedly claimed that in nearly 30 years together, he had never raised his voice or his hand to his wife. He confidently declared that Tina would soon return, or make contact, and the truth would prove his innocence. He even said he was willing to take a lie detector test, only to decline when offered one live on the radio, citing fatigue. Throughout this time, Richard built a consistent narrative. He was a devoted husband, caring for a mentally unstable wife. He claimed Tina had become increasingly depressed and violent after her brother's death. This story, however, was in stark contrast to everything her family, friends, and medical records indicated. Away from the cameras, Richard's behavior raised even more red flags. Just 10 days after Tina vanished, he texted her cousin Sarah Howard to offer her their large chest freezer. The next day, he posted an ad online to sell it. By late April and early May, Richard began selling Tina's belongings at flea markets, the very places where she had spent her happiest hours. He sold her clothes, her Dr. Martens boots, her handbags. When friends asked where Tina was, he spun elaborate tales. She had a severe infection from mold in the house and had gone to England for treatment. She was gravely ill and had lost nearly 45 pounds. She had a serious respiratory illness and couldn't come to the market anymore. Richard's elaborate performance succeeded in fooling the public, but for those close to the situation and for seasoned investigators, the cracks in his story were growing wider. What was really hiding behind this perfect charade? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. While Richard Satchwell was busy with his media interviews, the Irish police, known as the Gardaí, had begun an ever-expanding investigation. As early as late May 2017, investigators had a gut feeling that something was wrong, that a crime may have been committed. On June 7, 2017, less than 3 months after Tina disappeared, the first major search of the house at 3 Grattan Street was conducted. 10 officers spent about 12 hours combing through the property. Photographs taken during this search are, in hindsight, truly haunting. They show a relatively new, unpainted staircase, fresh plasterboard beside it, and a new red brick wall built under the stairs. Forensic scientists used luminol, a chemical that glows blue when it reacts with blood, to test the entire house. But no traces of blood were found, not in the living room, not on the stairs, not in Richard's car. With no blood evidence and no obvious signs of violence, the search team collected a few items, including Richard's laptop and phone. But they didn't break through the concrete under the stairs. They didn't use cadaver dogs. They didn't dig. The house at the time was described as incredibly filthy and cluttered, with dog feces everywhere, dishes piled high, and an uncleaned birdcage. In the years that followed, police conducted massive searches. In August 2017, they scoured Yule Harbor and wasteland areas. In March 2018, a major operation focused on the 40-acre Mitchell's Wood. Over 60 police officers, army engineers, and cadaver dogs searched for nearly 2 weeks. A no-fly zone was established, but it all led to nothing. The investigation pursued over 400 different lines of inquiry. There were 60 to 65 reported sightings of Tina in Ireland and abroad, but all were cases of mistaken identity. More than 170 statements were taken, and 100 hours of security footage were reviewed. But it seemed every lead was a dead end. Time passed, 4 years. The Tina Satchwell case was slowly turning cold. For her family, it was unending torture, a grief with no resolution. For Richard, it was 4 years of living in that house, walking over the very spot that held his secret, and continuing to play the part of the grieving husband while justice, it seemed, was asleep. Just when hope seemed lost, a key personnel change breathed new life into the investigation. In August 2021, Superintendent Anne-Marie Twomey was appointed as the senior investigating officer, and with her new team, she began a comprehensive review of the cold case. They left no stone unturned. They re-examined all 400 lines of inquiry. They rewatched every minute of the 100 hours of CCTV footage. They reanalyzed over 170 witness statements, and, crucially, they finally examined the digital devices that had been seized back in 2017. Richard's laptop, which had sat in an evidence locker for 4 years, was finally opened, and what they found sent a chill down investigators' spines. In late 2021, a detective discovered a disturbing search history. On the evening of March 24, 2017, 4 days after Tina disappeared and the very day Richard went to the police station, someone had used the laptop to search for the term quicklime. They had watched a YouTube video titled "Reaction of Quicklime in Water" twice. Quicklime is a substance used in construction, but it's also notorious for its ability to accelerate decomposition and neutralize odors in mass graves. This was a massive red flag. The second breakthrough came from cell phone data extracted in February 2022. It completely shattered Richard's story about that fateful morning. Geolocation data and security footage from the Yahoo post office showed that Richard had collected his social welfare payment at 11:10 a.m. on March 20th, not in Dungarvan as he'd claimed, but right there in Yahoo. The phone data proved he returned home shortly after and stayed there from approximately 11:10 a.m. to 12:50 p.m. This 100-minute window directly contradicted his alibi. He was at home during the entire time he claimed to be shopping in another town 18 miles away. The pieces started to fit together. The text message to Sarah Howard offering the freezer, the phone and email records, all of it created a timeline that exposed nearly every one of Richard's lies. By now, Superintendent Twomey had concluded that Tina Satchwell was no longer alive and had died as a result of an unlawful act. But they were still missing the most important thing, her body. If you find the work of these investigators admirable, don't forget to share this video to spread the story of this journey for justice. To find the final piece of the puzzle, police turned to Dr. Niamh McCullough, a forensic archaeologist specializing in locating and recovering concealed human remains. Her report in September 2023 was the final push. She noted that domestic perpetrators often create false narratives and misleading missing person reports. Female victims are typically disposed of closer to home. The structural changes in the Satchwell house, visible in the 2017 photos, were alarming signs. She recommended an invasive search using cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. On the evening of October 10, 2023, 6.5 years after Tina disappeared, police returned to 3 Grattan Street. This time, they came with building contractors, jackhammers, and a full forensic team. Richard Satchwell was arrested on suspicion of murder. The search began in earnest. A cadaver dog named Fern immediately showed intense interest in the area under the stairs. A detective noticed the red brick wall looked like it had been built by an amateur. Under bright lights, they pulled back the old floor covering and immediately saw what they were looking for: a rectangular patch of concrete of a different color, clearly newer than the surrounding floor. Around 9 p.m. on October 11, jackhammers began to break through the concrete. At a depth of about 25 inches, they found black plastic sheeting. The digging stopped immediately. The next morning, under the supervision of the forensic archaeologist, a human hand was uncovered. Slowly, carefully, the entire burial site was excavated. At noon on October 12, Richard Satchwell was arrested again, this time at a bus station. That evening, he was charged with murder. On October 13th, dental records confirmed what everyone had feared. The body buried under the stairs for 2,396 days was Tina Satchwell. Her Tweety Bird tattoo was still visible on her chest. After his arrest, Richard's story changed completely. He claimed Tina had attacked him with a chisel and that, in self-defense, he had accidentally strangled her with the cord of his bathrobe until she went limp. He said he buried her on Mother's Day, March 26, 2017, after hiding her body in the chest freezer for several days. Richard Satchwell's trial lasted 23 days. Prosecutors called him a master manipulator, brazen to the end. The quicklime search evidence, the cell phone data that exposed his lies, and perhaps most powerfully, a series of video clips of Richard himself on TV, crying and begging his wife to return, were all shown to the jury. After more than 9 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of murder. Richard showed no emotion. He was sentenced to life in prison. Outside the courthouse, Tina's family finally had justice. Half of her ashes were buried with her brother, the other half with her beloved grandmother. The case was solved thanks to the persistence of a dedicated investigation team who refused to give up. Tina Satchwell could now rest in peace. She is remembered for who she truly was: a kind, gentle, animal-loving woman with a radiant smile and a passion for fashion. She deserves to be remembered not for the tragic death she suffered, but for the beautiful life she lived.